please welcome back to the stage your host, Angie Glassman.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a productive break. I hope you made some friends. And as we kick off the second part of the opening ceremony, we're now turning our attention to powering on, accelerating the energy transition, scaling clean technologies, and ensuring resilient, reliable energy systems that underpin both economic growth and national security. To help us unpack the progress we're making, we're hearing from a country leading the way. Australia is rapidly expanding its clean energy capacity, strengthening its grids, and balancing climate ambition with economic realities. Few voices can speak to both the opportunities and the hurdles of this transition like our next presenter. It's my pleasure to present to you Honourable Chris Bowen, Minister of Climate Change and Energy for Australia.
Thank you, Angie. It's wonderful to be with you at this very important session. And this Climate Week comes as Australia has just presented our nationally determined contribution to the UNFCCC of a cut in emissions by 2035 of 62 to 70%. A target we regard as ambitious but also achievable. Hard work, not automatic, won't be easy, but achievable, which is the key thing. But this morning I just want to share with you two very quick key core messages. Firstly, a challenge. Climate denial is still with us, but it takes new forms. All too hardism, this is all too hard. Or no one else is doing enough. Why should we do this when the rest of the world isn't moving? And that's an easy message and narrative for the deniers and delayers to communicate when there's plenty of doom and gloom and stories about how the world is not proceeding with action on climate change. We know, though, it isn't true. $2 trillion of investment in renewable energy, twice investment in fossil fuels. The world undertaking a transition at very rapid pace, with renewables going to overtake coal as the largest source of energy sometime this calendar year. So we need to continue to tell the story that the world is acting, that progress is being made, and that we can't simply sit by and do nothing with the excuse that others aren't doing enough. Yes, we'd like to see more right around the world, but we can't pretend that things aren't happening. My second message is a positive one. There are remarkable opportunities to put consumers, to put individuals in charge for the first time. In the old days, we used to just get an energy bill and have no choice but to pay it. That is rapidly changing, certainly in my country. Country with the highest rooftop solar penetration in the world, with more than a third of Australian houses having solar panels on the roof, more than have a backyard swimming pool, and many Australian houses have a backyard swimming pool, more have solar panels on the roof, in charge of their own energy. And now increasingly with a home battery. 1,000 Australian households a day installing a home battery as we speak. We introduced a new scheme on the 1st of July to provide a 30% rebate. Since then, 63,000 Australian houses have put batteries in. Now, that means they are now a power plant with a solar panel on their roof, with a battery in their garage. They can decide what to do with their energy, and they can provide energy to the grid when prices are high, and instead of getting an energy bill, if they choose, get an energy rebate each month. Get a cheque from their energy provider instead of sending a cheque like we used to in the old days. Now, this is a remarkable opportunity to transform consumers into prosumers, producers and consumers of energy all at the same time. And this is part of the story that we can tell, that yes, there are challenges and headwinds and delays, but there are remarkable opportunities, not just the jobs that can be created in large-scale wind and large-scale solar, as important as that is, but each and every day a revolution being undertaken in our suburbs and our regions. Saying to consumers, you no longer just have to accept what you are given, but you can be in charge of the energy you need, whether it's production or consumption. So put these two stories together, the world is taking action. and that consumers and individuals and households and small businesses can take control of their own energy use with the right policy settings, then we have a remarkable story of optimism to tell. A story that this is not too hard. Yes, it is hard, but it is not too hard. And we can reject this all too hardism that so often infects the debate. That yes, climate change might be real and maybe it's important, but it's all too hard, so we shouldn't worry. That is a narrative we fundamentally reject in Australia. We see this as an opportunity to create jobs, an opportunity to create wealth, and an opportunity to put consumers in charge for the first time in their lives. We have to keep going. We now have 53 months to 2030. That is not long. That will go very fast. And then we have to drive on to 2035 and to 2050 and net zero. Well, my friends, Australia will be there all the way on this journey. Yes, we are historically a very large fossil fuel producer, but we want to continue to be an energy powerhouse, just a different type of energy going forward. Renewable energy, supported by all the necessary technologies. And conferences like this are an important opportunity to find friends and partners in that journey. Thank you for being a friend of Australia. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Donnie Simmons, Group President, Americas Region at Trane Technologies, and Angela Baranco, Executive Director for North America Climate Group.
Well, hello everyone. It is so good to be here, and I'm very thrilled to be sharing the stage with Donnie here. Thank you for joining us. So I think we're just going to jump in because there is a lot to talk about. And what we're going to really be covering today and thinking about is how we dive into the ROI of sustainability in this incredibly interesting time of uncertainty. And it certainly could not be more timely. So thank you for joining us. So companies are facing tough trade-offs, whether it's keeping down costs, investing in long-term decarbonization, sticking with conventional materials, or paying for more low-carbon supplies. So to start the conversation, I can't think of a better person to help us unpack this because businesses are navigating all of these challenges every single day. And you at Trane have really set some bold 2030 goals. You are talking about how you're helping customers cut 1 billion metric tons of carbon. And, you know, the truth is we hear companies making pledges and commitments, and so let's focus on the results. Tell us a little bit about the progress you've made towards these goals and how you're measuring them, how it translates into real-world impact.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Angela. So first off, let me start a little bit with about Trane Technologies. We have a purpose. It's a common purpose for us as a company to boldly challenge what's possible and innovate for a sustainable world. And I'll get to our gigaton challenge. So you talked about that, the billion metric tons, that's a gigaton. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of carbon reduction that we've committed to. I actually want to go back all the way to 2014 for a second, because that's the first time as a company that we made climate commitments. And it was significant for us at the time when we set the goals that we had no idea how we were going to achieve them. And we ended up actually achieving our goals of reduction of energy consumption, et cetera, by 2018. And it was a 2019 commitment. So in 2019, we said, hey, we're going to go big. We're going to set some really challenging goals with the Gigaton Challenge. And first off, we all had to figure out, what is a gigaton? Like, this is a bunch of carbon that we have to reduce. And again, sitting at the table, we're wondering, how are we going to do this? This is a significant amount. This is like removing the same amount of carbon that is emitted by Germany and France together annually. Like, it's a tremendous amount of carbon reduction. To date, through 2024, so we set that goal in 2020 effectively, and to date, we're at 237 million metric tons of carbon reduction on our path to a gigaton by 2030. So we measure that with our customers, and we actually measure it project by project. Every individual project that we do, we're measuring what the impact is. We're collecting data in real time and providing that information to our customers. And so, and by the way, these are science-based targets. So we're accountable for the results that we put down, and we have a third party that verifies that we did what we said, which is really important as well.
And I've heard you talk before about innovation and how critical that is to meeting these targets and being able to be really assertive in the market. And especially in this sort of tougher climate that we're living in economically, how are you seeing sustainable innovation to cut emissions, but also from a business standpoint? Does it give you an advantage?
It gives a huge advantage. So I think about just our results as a company. We've had a compounded annual growth rate from 2020, which is when we officially became Trane Technologies, of 12%. And it really comes back to our purpose of boldly challenging what's possible and innovating for a sustainable world. And that last piece, that innovating, is what's really important. So last year, as an example, we launched 190 new products for our customers. Every product that we have, every product that we introduce, we're focusing on sustainability, focusing on improving. If you look over the last 5 years of our product portfolio, the efficiency of the products that we serve with our customers are 70% more efficient. It's tremendous. This is huge. So the ROI is there. For us as a company, our shareholder return over the last 5 years is 286%. So we can see the benefit, and we're creating value for our customers along the way.
See, I think that's so interesting because there's still such a perception that sustainability has this enormous price tag, this green premium, this opportunity that only can be achieved with more money, right? So how are you seeing your investments and the hard economics sort of bearing out throughout the years? And you've been at Trane for 25 years, so you've really seen it.
I've seen a lot of change. So let's just think a little bit about the ROI, because there is really a misnomer that you can't have good paybacks. We see paybacks 2 to 3 years. We see paybacks that are immediate. By the way, buildings inherently, from the day you commission a building, from that point forward, you're going to operate less efficiently. And so in many times, we can have like immediate paybacks for our customers where we're able to reduce emissions. So think about a building that's operating, typically will operate 30% inefficiently. That doesn't mean you need to put new equipment in. It doesn't mean you need to put in new systems in order to improve that. It's there. It's just waiting for you to analyze it, use the data to understand it, and help reduce improve the overall operating of the building. And we do that every day. We do thousands and thousands of energy audits for our customers to find those opportunities. And honestly, sometimes we find where we're like, hey, you're as good as it gets. We can't do anything else for you. But many times, most of the time, we're finding big opportunities that you don't have to spend money. And the other thing is, like, the technology's here today. This isn't a technology question. A lot of times I'll get asked, what type of technology, new innovation do you have to come up with in order to meet your goals for your customers? And the technology exists today. And it really comes down to a really simple concept. When I think about the biggest impact for sustainability, it's really how are you using heat? Because today, in a traditional building or a factory or any type of environment like that, you typically have 2 different operating plants. One is a plant that cools, and another is a plant that heats. Well, the technology is here to simultaneous heat and cool, so you can reuse the heat. You don't have to, in a building in New York, one side of the building you'll be cooling part of the day, and the other side you'll be heating. You're wasting heat when you do it the traditional way. And so we've had multiple examples of customers, like one right here in New York City, the biggest building in New York City, 55 Water Street. It's 3.5 million square feet. It's got its own zip code. I mean, this thing is tremendous. And we've done, we've been working with them for 15 to 20 years. We just most recently introduced, this was last year, we did all this within a 12-month period. While the building was maintained and operating, we were able to reduce their steam consumption by 70%. And so we put in what we refer to as a storage source heat pump. It actually uses the benefits of having thermal storage in a building that normally you use for cooling. We're actually using that same technology to help heat the building. Tremendous. This saves, that 55 Water Street has saved like 1.5 million in utility costs per year. I mean, it's huge. I mean, I can go example after example of the types of ways that customers are taking advantage of these things today.
Well, that's amazing to hear, because I think, and sort of the last question I'll pose to you, like this, kind of debate around, quarterly results and shareholders, and how do you present the company, and, how do you invest in these long-term sustainability programs if you really are beholden to that quarterly report, right? So can you speak a little bit about that tension? I think you're already going there.
I feel the pressure, right? It's real. It's not going away either, right? I mean, let's be realistic about it. The pressure as a public company, you're always going to be challenged by your shareholders to continue to drive returns. But all I'm sharing with you is that you can do that. You can do both. And we're proof of that. That's what our entire focus is as a company. And every one of you can do the same thing. You can find that 30% inefficiency without spending money. And there's so much out there to help you too, to make sure that you're able to meet the commitments that you've got to your shareholders, as well as have long-term goals that are better for the environment, which is that's what we do. That's what we do every day.
Well, with that, I think we have run out of time, but thank you, Donnie, for everything, and a huge round of applause.
Thank you, Angela.
Please join me in welcoming Helen Clarkson, OBE, the CEO of Climate Group, Karine Smith-Ihanacho, Chief Governance and Compliance Officer at Norges Bank Investment Management, Ezgi Barcenas, Chief Corporate Responsibility Officer at L'Oreal Group, and Dan Ayashby, COP30 High-Level Champion.
Well, thanks everyone. I'm thrilled to be joined by such a great lineup here today. And we're tackling this age-old question, sustainability versus profitability. It's not a new perceived trade-off. It's certainly not going anywhere. But in some circles, it's now starting to be weaponized. And we felt it was a good moment to unpack, according to the current business environment, and see how that green advantage is playing out and what more could be done to strengthen the business case for sustainability. So let's start with you, Karina. Let's talk money. Norges Bank Investment Management manages one of the world's largest funds, and you are clear in your view of climate risk and its materiality. So from where you sit, why is it so important that companies focus on climate?
Yeah, thank you. Let me start with the good news here, because for us it is clear that companies that get the transition right, they will definitely have a competitive edge. And I think we'll hear more about such a company later. I mean, climate risk is financial risk. It cuts across all asset classes. It affects the global economy, affects individual companies. It affects us as an investor. And I'll just give you one example. You know, we are a big financial investor. We have invested around $2 trillion around the world, but a lot of it is also here in the US. We have around more than $800 billion invested here in the US. And when we do scenario analysis, we see that for the long term, that with current climate policies, you know, our equity holdings may be reduced as much as with 20% if you look at the longer term. That's a lot of money, 20% taken off 800 billion. And that's why, you know, we care so much about climate. We are a financial investor. Our mission is to safeguard and create wealth for future generations. But that means we really have to take climate into account. And what we want to do is to support and challenge the companies in our portfolio so they can reduce their emission and have a long-term viable business strategy. Because what is clear is in a low-carbon society, companies with high emissions, they will struggle to be competitive.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about a carbon-constrained future and what does your business look like in that future. So Ezgi, let's get that corporate perspective. L'Oreal is active in so many markets and cultures. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how is sustainability shaping competitiveness and resilience in the consumer sectors? And are there particular areas where it's making a noticeable difference?
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for having us here today. It's a pleasure to join the discussion. So at L'Oreal Group, we are present in over 150 countries around the world, and that reach means that that scale means that we see the wide-reaching impacts of climate change across our value chain, from our sourcing regions to our operations, to our consumers and communities where we live and work. And as a leader in the beauty industry, for us, we feel that we not only have a responsibility but an opportunity to help shape the future of beauty. What does that mean? When we think about the future of beauty is more sustainable, more inclusive, and more personalized. And for you to help shape that future and bring it to life, you have to really apply sustainability as a lens so that you can build the resilience, you can unlock innovation and competitiveness, of course, ultimately. So take water stress, for example. We are seeing growing water stress around the world with the impacts of climate change. And for us, this means that we have to deeply understand the changing consumer habits, the local realities around the world, to continue to better serve the everyday needs and very diverse aspirations of our consumers around the world. And so the future of shampoo, the future of face wash, what does that look like? How can we use that data and continue to really deeply understand the local context so that we can inform our innovation pipelines and our product design in terms of no-rinse solutions, fast-rinse solutions? So these are the types of questions we're asking ourselves inside the business to continue to, again, build that resilience for the communities, but also for our business. If you apply that lens to our processes, for example, we are investing in technologies like OsmoBloom, that is a waterless extraction technology that allows us to extract the natural scent out of a flower using no water. So again, really thinking through those processes to prepare for that water-resilient future. And we do that similarly with our retailer partners. So hair salons, one of our most critical retailers, customers, for them to continue to better serve the needs of their own consumers, we're investing in technologies such as Water Saver, which is a shower head using fragmentation technology that uses up to cuts down more than half of the water used in the back bar of a hair salon, and not only allows that salon to save on water and deliver the same high quality service, but also lowers their energy use and therefore energy bill as well. So again, really thinking through across the value chain to understand deeply the impacts of climate change, but also to prepare for the resilience that can ultimately unlock innovation.
Yeah, that's so interesting, going all the way through that kind of different angles of the same issue. Dan, you stepped into your role as COP30 high-level champion just as private sector momentum has become more critical than ever. From your conversations, how are companies thinking about the connection between their commitment to sustainability and staying competitive? And can you give us some examples?
Thanks, Helen. I think my colleagues just mentioned this in a very clear way. We don't see two routes here. There is a competitive route of sustainable socioeconomic development, which is what companies, governments, municipalities, communities, academia is looking for. And we see COP30 as a very supportive moment, and probably the further COPs ahead of us and the whole yearly cycle, including events like this. These are very supportive to showcase amazing solutions like we just heard here. And we could talk about aviation fuel, we could talk about maritime fuel, we can talk about fashion, we can talk about agriculture, land restoration, and so many other opportunities ahead of us. So I see a lot of commitment, and it's not a commitment just to check a box, but it's a real competitive, strategic, only one route to move forward.
Great. And let's talk about how businesses are now reacting to the changing economic environment. Karina, companies today are they're juggling so much. They're trying to stay competitive. They're trying to gear up, as we said, for a decarbonised future. From what you're seeing, how are they balancing that pressure for short-term profits with those kind of bigger, longer-term investments they need?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not easy, but companies need to be profitable, absolutely. But they need to have a good plan for transition if they're going to be profitable in the long run. And I think what we're seeing a lot now, it's a shift really from climate targets to real climate action. And the most successful companies are those companies that really find that nice spot where they think about short-term profitability, but also a strategy that's going to make sure they are profitable for the longer term. But of course, this is not easy. First of all, it's so many challenges companies have now. Just to mention a few, I mean, it's geopolitical risk, it's tariffs, it's inflation. I mean, it's so many struggles for the companies. But really, what we're saying is that, yes, of course, in the shorter term, as I said, you need to think about profit, but really, you need a long-term strategies. And what is great to see is that when we look at our portfolio, we actually see that 76% of our emissions, we love data, but 76% of our emissions are covered by credible net zero targets, which is great. But of course, one thing is to set targets. The next thing is to manage also to action on them. And that's where we think we come in. It's that being that supportive shareholder to say, we understand, you know, this is a long journey and we're here to support you for the longer term. We're not a shareholder that just look at the next quarterly results, but we also, you know, want to look at your long-term profitability. And I just want to say another number that's quite interesting. You know, what we are seeing is that there are companies that are walking away from their targets due to the environment we're in, the pressures companies are under. And when we've looked at some data that when companies lose their science-based targets verification, actually their share price on average had dropped by 2%. And what we read from that is that actually, you know, investors find climate governance important. Yeah. And so again, you know, it is important not just to think about the next quarter and stay focused also on the longer term perspective.
Great, thank you. Eski, 2025 is the halfway point for L'Oreal for the future, which shows that doing well and doing good can go hand in hand. With the economy feeling so uncertain right now, how do you decide which sustainability initiatives you're going to focus on so it's also delivering that business value?
Yeah, at L'Oreal, we have a long-standing commitment to what we call dual excellence. So delivering economic performance while at the same time delivering that positive social environmental impact. And this commitment is one of our cornerstone values across the business. And for decades, we've been investing in both economic performance and social and environmental performance as well. And that commitment remains unwavering. So when you have that as part of your core values that is driven from the top down across the business and across the entire company in different teams, divisions, business units, then you don't think of it as a choice. You think of it as a way of operating, as a mandate for you to build that resilience, to build that competitiveness, to unlock innovation, but ultimately to better serve the needs of your consumers, to improve the quality of lives around the world. And that's what businesses are here to do. So for us, you know, for a company born out of science over 115 years ago, this really is about the pursuit of science, the pursuit of innovation, the pursuit of excellence in everything we do, so that we can continue to stay at the forefront and make those choices, inform those innovation ecosystems, think about the product design, think about the innovation pipeline so that we can better serve our communities around the world. And I would say it's so evident across everything we do. I was just in India visiting one of our plants there, and it was incredible to see our operations teams and how they apply that lens every day to their jobs, to how they think about resource use, how they think about efficiencies, how they think about water use, energy use, and then applying that mindset to the solutions they find and then cascading across the whole business. But it needs to run every day inside the operations, inside the business, in every department for it to be fully integrated in the business. And then you realize that it's no longer a choice. Yeah. It's a way of doing business.
And that's something that the employees can talk to one another about. Is that in the kind of day-to-day of how they talk?
Exactly.
Yeah. Dan, there's a lot of talk these days about getting transition finance out into the real economy. And you're in an industry going through one of the biggest shifts ever from combustion engines to electrification. So tell us, what's holding business leaders back from using that finance to drive decarbonisation, and how do we cut through the excuses?
I wouldn't say holding back, but the truth is that we need much more. A lot has been done. We are accelerating, and we need to do a lot more in many different sectors and segments. What we are trying to do, I think, around the climate environment and COP30 is to showcase those solutions and help them to accelerate. Because at the end of the day, if we scale, if we have a demand side, the supply side, it gets much easier for the financing side to come in, and we can accelerate also the financial cycle so that those resources go in and out of a specific project quicker than before. And of course, we can do a better job. It's already great, but we can do better with platforms. And again, showcasing through the granary of solutions, through this process of accelerating technologies and promising alternative solutions to make sure that funders are aware, financiers are aware. Going around the world, we keep seeing a lot of people not being able to deploy all of their resources, and a lot of projects that are not being capable of connecting to the resources. So hopefully this will be done more properly over time. But again, to accelerate the solutions, to generate a lot of demand, and to foster the supply side at the end of the day could be a very supportive way to naturally move on that direction.
And what are you hearing from businesses in the sort of run-up to COP30 on that?
I think a lot of excitement at the end of the day, because if we can propose a place where we de-bottleneck, that's very helpful to everyone. So if we can put the highlight of all of this process that we go through throughout the year, not only 2025, but every year, as a de-bottlenecking arena where we sit together and we find solutions for very practical, pragmatic, specific issues, that could be very supportive, especially for the financing and for the de-risking of those projects.
Great, and let's look at leadership and influence. So Corinna, from an investor's perspective, you've got a front row seat to how companies think about risk and opportunity. What kind of leadership do you think really sets the tone, and what inspires peers in the market?
Yes, that's true. We have a front row seat. I mean, we talk to companies every day, and just last year we had around 3,000 company meetings, a lot of them with company boards, and just 500 of them was about climate and nature. So absolutely, and we see a vast difference between the conversations we have. But I would say there's basically three things where we see the sort of leaders show themselves. And we heard, good examples here today about a company that's really taking leadership. But one is that, to be a leader, you have to engage with the whole value chain, not just look at your own operations, but also look at, how that affects customers. Also look at your supplier, really go down in your value chain and see what can be done in the value chain. And also, sometimes engaging with competitors, are there problems we can solve together? And so engaging across value chain. The next one is really to make sustainability as a core part of business strategy. As we heard about L'Oreal, really it's the way we do business. And for us, when we discuss with companies about their transition plan, climate risk, that we believe that conversation should start in the boardroom. It should be a clear part of the overall strategy for the company. It should be about how you allocate capital, how you assess risk. So that's really not an add-on, but a core part of a company's strategy. And third, it's about being transparent about learning. We talked before about this is difficult. This is really difficult for many companies. And when we see some companies, they're open about the dilemmas. They're open about, failures. They're open about successes. And in that way, other peer companies, others can learn from them. And that's where I think you really take leadership. So, it's not, it's important. This is not about setting climate targets. It's about finding sort of competitive, profitable pathway to lower your carbon emissions and be open about that. And that's when I think you really take leadership and have an influence on the whole market.
Yeah. And when you sort of push companies to take it into the boardroom, how do they respond to that? And can you talk us through that at all, about the reaction you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we often start with the company chair, right? The board chair, and talk about it. And some chairs are very comfortable about it because, yes, it's a big part of the strategy. Some chairs are not. They would need the chief sustainability officer with them to help out, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, you can really see how much is embedded in really the overall strategy. But what we're seeing more and more, it's positive. We are seeing that the board take huge responsibilities and really want to make it part of the overall strategies, at least for most of the companies. So we have really engaging conversations with company boards.
Great. Dan, in today's uncertain climate, politically, economically, socially, it can be risky for business leaders, it doesn't matter where their offices are headquartered, to speak out. From your experience in leading companies, what advice would you give to those who are trying to maintain leadership, influence others, and keep meaningful action moving forward?
Well, more than advice, what I can share with you is that those processes are all usually mid-long-term processes. Let's take an example, hydrogen-based solutions. You don't do this in a political cycle of any country in the world. You cannot lock those things this way. It may take 10 years. It may take 5 years. So what I see effectively companies doing is moving forward as much as they can, as well as they can. And if they have to keep quiet for a while on those subjects, well, that's part of the process. And then later they will be able to share this in a different way. But again, I think we need to be supportive and focus on the effective problems, on what is holding back. If problems are from a regulation, from a legislation standpoint, let's share that also with legislators, the parties, the global entities related to that. But when we are dealing with more daily life subjects, let's do that as well, and let's keep quiet if needed, but continue to work on those solutions.
Yeah, I think it's tricky, isn't it? We've got these two clocks running at very different speeds of, political cycles versus that investment, the long-term investment. That's what we're hearing from all of you. Ezgi, so with L'Oreal's global reach, you've had to bring together so many teams and suppliers, partners on that journey. Where have you seen those big sparks of inspiration, those moments where people really lean in and make it happen?
I'm a firm believer in the power of curiosity and the speed of trust. And I think when it comes to sustainability, you have to establish that trust relationship, firstly, inside your organization across different teams. Secondly, with your value chain, as Karina mentioned, for you to be really transparent about the challenges, about the problems you're tackling, but also for you to be really curious about what's happening on the ground. What am I really solving for? Am I solving for the environment, but at the same time, thinking about the socioeconomic impact and making sure that the solution that you're putting in the market is really long-term and sustainable. So how we think through that across our business, starting inside our business, across different teams, divisions, is very important. But then thinking through with our supply chain partners and really co-innovating with them, co-designing with them that future, the new solutions, the products, and really, again, being very transparent. And I cannot really emphasize this. For me, for you to have that dual excellence mindset to deliver the economic performance and at the same time the social and environmental impact, you have to be very transparent about the challenges. And therefore, earlier this year, we've launched our Sustainable Innovation Accelerator program called the Accelerator to look for new breakthrough solutions and identify new partners that are going to allow us to reach our ambitions towards 2030 and beyond, to continue to, again, serve the everyday beauty and hygiene needs of our consumers around the world. And, the idea behind the program is not just for us to seed those innovation ecosystems and be very transparent about our needs, It also allows us to send the demand signals to the market, as Dan mentioned, the demand and the supply side. If you're being transparent about the challenges, the gaps that you're facing, the solutions that you're looking for, then you can really inform those innovation ecosystems everywhere around the world, because innovation is everywhere. Our teams around the world are being very resourceful. They understand their local context. And there's many entrepreneurs and founders that are out there that may be using or working on a solution that may be applicable for a different use case. But once you're starting to become open and transparent and candid about your challenges, then you can inform them about ways that they can also evolve their solutions as well. So for us, this is really important. And for a global business, I think in the private sector, our role is to also help enable that technology and knowledge transfer across the world, for us to really play a role in capacity building, but also to share those learnings and insights from market to market, again, to be able to catalyze innovation and sustainability into the future. And for us to be able to do that, again, transparency plays a key role. But the last point maybe I'd like to make is how our founder, Eugene Schiller, once said that a company is not about walls and machines. It's about people, people, people. So again, if you're putting people and equity at the heart of everything you do in the solutions that you're looking for, then ultimately you're really helping design a more sustainable and inclusive future, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, very exciting. I do want to ask you all just one quick last question. Our theme for this week is Power On, so maybe just a parting thought for everyone here about the week and how they can power on. Dan, let's just start. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Climate action agenda, let's implement, let's power on.
Yeah, great. Ezgi, any final thoughts?
Let's continue to power on with deep decarbonization, but at the same time solving for resilience and adaptation as well.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, same. One thing is great targets, but now let's go for real action.
Great, real action. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our panel. So now we're going to shift. Hi, everyone. No, that's not doing that. We're shifting gears to another critical piece of the puzzle, energy. Clean energy isn't coming, it's here, reshaping national security, resilience, and global competitiveness. And so I'm thrilled to introduce our next speaker, Damalola Ogunbayi, who's Special Representative of the UN Secretary General and CEO of Sustainable Energy for All, for her keynote, The Power Shift from Clean Power to World Power. So again, join me in thanking them again, and we will...
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is really a privilege for me to join you today for the opening of this year's Climate Week, New York City. Each year, Climate Week acts as an important milestone focused on how we can stand at this precipice of change. But today, the reality is more severe. The world is in turmoil. And we must acknowledge our privilege to be in this room, to debate and even urge action. Equality must bear the responsibility. To allow us to just sit here and say there's no backsliding is incorrect. We must have a renewed vigor of what is possible. And we must understand that climate and ending energy poverty is one of the same. We have to strengthen energy security and advance energy transition to make it just and equitable for everybody. So let me start with the data. Energy-related emissions reached an all-time high of 37.8 billion tons last year. Even as we work to reduce emissions through energy efficiency measures, we cannot discount that 84% of the world's population live in developing countries, where they need more energy to power their economies and create jobs for their youth. However, we have the solutions in place. Clean energy is no longer a distant vision. The age of clean energy is here. Around the world, the transformation is unmistakable. Over the past decade, the cost of solar power has fallen by 90%, and wind energy more than 70%. It's also important to see that solar energy capacity reached 1 terawatt in 2022 after decades of growth, but 2 terawatts only 2 years ago in 2024. Despite this amazing progress, it's important for us to note that only 15% of investments in clean energy goes to emerging and developing countries, and only 2% of that figure goes to my continent, Africa. So we can't talk about growth, we can't talk about development, and not leave Africa in the conversation. Our research has shown that if we do not directly target people who need more energy while trying to reduce energy, we will be in the same situation that we've always been. We will focus on developing economies based on dirty fuel and come back, and I will be standing with you in 20 years' time talking about how we are going to decommission engines in Africa. But the truth is, Africa does have that potential to leapfrog. Ladies and gentlemen, technologies and markets are not the only ones that's going to drive the energy transition. It's many of you in this room today with your willingness and your drive to say no to the energy systems of the past and really embrace the energy system of now. And with a lot of governments in this room, this can only happen with you putting forward your nationally determined contributions on the way to Belém. They aren't just documents. They're a signal to the rest of the world of what we want to do for our Commonwealth and our planet. So as we begin this week, we have to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. We need to accelerate renewable energy development. We need to electrify transport systems. We need to restore ecosystems. And we also need to promote just transitions that truly leave no one behind. I really want us to urge that everybody in this room is here because we are in the age of clean energy. If we do not act together with courage and with unity, we will not only meet our commitments, we will define a new era of shared security, shared prosperity, and shared hope. So thank you very much for listening to me today. If anybody wants to find out any more information about what we do in the UN system, please log on to our website at Sustainable Energy for All. And if you're any government thinking, how do I really transition in a time of debt distress, in a time of poverty, please reach out to us as well. We do have tools that are about helping and about economic growth. Thank you very much.
Please join me in welcoming Gloria Walton, CEO of the Solutions Project, Mark Ruffalo, actor, climate solutions advocate, and co-founder of the Solutions Project, and Time's Chief Climate Officer, Shaila Raghav.
Good morning. It's such an honor to be here with all of you. I'm Shaila Raghav, the Chief Climate Officer of Time. My work focuses on storytelling, on using our trusted role in media to shine a spotlight on leaders who are changing the future of climate action and our whole economy. And I'm so honored to be sharing the stage with two leaders that were actually the awardees of our inaugural Earth Award, Mark Ruffalo and Gloria Walton. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Thank you for being here, everybody.
So our conversation today is really going to focus on advocacy. It's going to focus on the moment that we find ourselves in today. I want to start by really thinking about the translation of public concern and perception into political power and political action. Consistently, polls find that people care about climate, that they think that our leaders should do something about it, but that's just, quite frankly, not happening. From your vantage point, what is really needed to reach that tipping point where political leaders act even when it feels inconvenient or when other priorities may seem to take precedence?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see political leaders do is actually use the power. I mean, there's 80 million people in America today that know that climate change is real, that it's actually affecting our lives, that it's caused by us and burning carbon, and want to do something to change it for their grandchildren and the coming generations. So we have this enormous amount of power that we need our elected officials to actually tap into and have the guts to tap into and create coalitions. Now, this transcends everything. If you want to get into cost of living, it's climate change. If you want to get into working conditions, it's climate change. If you want to talk about solutions and transitioning and all the jobs that will create, it's climate change. So, but we need some guts from our leadership. But it's not a big step because the power's already there. The public's already there. But it's a fear of this paradigm that we're living in, where we have a president who's denying climate change and we have a fossil fuel industry that's just completely gone off the rails with lies and throwing money at this issue and fear. But if there's nothing else that this moment requires from any of us is to drop our fear and to speak up and speak about what we know is true. So that's what I think we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. What I take away from that is just this principle that I've really been thinking about, which is courage, right? Yeah. Where is the courage, and how can we find that within ourselves and demand that of people in positions of power? Now, Gloria, your work has focused in your entire career with frontline and grassroots communities. Now, what we see is that grassroots communities are often the first to move. They're the innovators, they're the solutionists. That's because they don't have the luxury of just debating whether or not this is real. These are their lives. It's oftentimes an existential issue for them, but they're usually marginal to conversations that take place in fora like this or when these decisions are being made. How do you think that structurally we can reposition philanthropy, finance, politics, so that these communities are not marginal, but rather centered in these decisions?
So I'm appreciating you just elevating the word courage, which is actually a Latin word that comes from the word cor, meaning heart. And so that's what our communities always have, and what we lead with is a lot of heart. And a couple of weeks ago, I had the honor and the privilege of being in New Orleans, Louisiana, with community commemorating the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And we came together in song and dance and music, breaking bread together, sharing stories. We cried, we grieved, we were in ceremony, ritual, and prayer. And the reality is that communities, and especially those that are most impacted, don't have the luxury to forget. Too many lives were lost, too many families displaced, and too many still in recovery from the imprint of emotional, physical, and mental trauma. And today, I'm super grateful because of the indigenous leaders that came from all over the world, the global north and the global south, happening right now to be in collective ceremony for the power and the protection of all communities, especially those on the front lines. And we either heard or we know about or maybe participated in people taking to the streets and marching and pushing back against this billionaire stranglehold on our society, our economy, and our democracy. And when I think about all the leaders taking to the streets, that's where the power is. Our communities are coming together, and that's really what I like about New York Climate Week, is that it brings together communities on the front lines, civil society, government, philanthropy, as you mentioned, and it's bringing together the folks who already have acknowledged that the climate crisis is real and it's happening. And what I like about folks taking to the streets is that they were pushing back against this billionaire stranglehold, but they also said that climate justice is intersectional and linking climate justice to fights for our democracy, trans rights, immigrant rights, and gender equality. And Climate Week is bringing together all of these different sectors, and it's people who've already acknowledged that the climate crisis is happening right now. And so they come here, either they're already taking action or they're trying to figure out what they can do to take action, and that's why they come to Climate Week. And now is a time, when I think about the action that we're taking, it's imperative for it to be unified and just. And we need to move away from the silos and have more collaborative approaches and efforts. And what that means for government is thinking about what kind of muscle can we exercise that's really going to amplify what the role of government should be for its people? And for our corporate leaders, let's seize the greatest economic opportunity of the century and scale equitable climate solutions that are going to power new economies. And for philanthropy, it's time to level up and double down on the communities that we know are winning and leading solutions that benefit all of us. And when I think about civil society and community, we need to remain courageous and resolute, filled with fervor of heart, speaking about that courage, and determined and trusting our heart and our vision, and continuing to build on the legacy of organizing, power building, advocacy, resilience, transforming systems, and ensuring that this transition is just, equitable, and doesn't leave anyone behind, especially the communities that are most impacted and are most marginalized, those on the front lines. So what I'm clear about in this moment is that this is not the time to be contracting or retracting or paralyzed and doing nothing. This is the time for us to come together and join forces, most importantly, with the communities that are already innovating solutions that uplift all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. I think such an important feature of what you've just said is just this idea of reframing.
Yes.
Right? So climate change isn't about us having to give up something, that there's a sacrifice, or that you have to lose something to take action. There's an inherent opportunity. So kind of to build on that thread of narrative and storytelling, I think we know that science and fact and statistics are not capable of sparking a movement. If they were, we would have solved climate change decades ago. As a storyteller, as an artist, how do you think that we can tap in emotionally to humanize the climate crisis in a way that can also draw on our cultural power?
Well, first of all, we need that data. It's essential because it's how we're fighting against the lies. But it is a storytelling. It's always been the same. Every movement throughout history, every modern movement was based in storytelling. Whether it was a civil rights movement, or it's equal rights movement, or what have you. Even the fossil fuel infrastructure movement, which is probably the most profound movement as far as climate goes, which started with some kids, the story of some kids, Native American Lakota kids, who said, I'm going to run from here to my governor's office to bring the news that we don't want this pipeline, which is deeply steeped in their indigenous cultural storytelling of the black snake. And this pipeline that's going to come and poison our water. And mini wachoni, which means water is life. That is another ancient piece of storytelling that came into the modern, and we all understood that simple message: water is life. And it created one of the biggest standing rock, and what happened in the Lakota moved out throughout the entire world. And the world galvanized it. It brought all the indigenous communities together under one message. And that's continues to reverberate right now. And any climate movement that the Biden administration made was informed, and Obama made, was informed by that massive mobilization. And that came from the storytelling. And so it's all storytelling. Storytelling is where we understand. It opens our hearts. And that's how we make change. Is we have to transcend the political message and the technological message and even the economic message sometimes to get to the people. And it's the storytelling that changes us.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mark. Now, Gloria, maybe you can conclude and help us wrap this up with where do we go from here? We are in an unprecedented time of rollbacks, of dwindling funding, of funding being pulled back actively from solutions that were starting to gain momentum just a year ago. How do we create more durable systems that are capable of withstanding political turmoil or changes that might affect the longevity of these solutions or these programs?
I think in a moment like now that we're all living with, managing through, navigating on the daily, right? Like something's popping off literally every day. It requires us being grounded and super clear on what our vision is for the society that we want to live in. And often there's more similarities in our vision than not. And so I think from whatever sector you represent, whether you come from philanthropy, government, civil society, community, corporations, I think that this moment is requiring us to put a little bit more humanity in whatever we do, and to exercise a moral compass that is connecting you to the person sitting next to you and to communities that aren't even in this room. I feel like we need a little bit more heart, right? This word courage, again, is about heart, and this moment is requiring that of us. And I guess what I'll say is that the present day and the future will not remember what we feared, but what we've built together. And that's the muscle that I think we all need to exercise, is recognizing that, yes, this climate fight, the climate crisis is immense. And sometimes it feels like it's too much for us to do together. But the reality is that when we come together, our courage, our creativity, our ingenuity is even greater. And when you fuel that with humanity and heart, we can accomplish anything together.
Thank you so much. I could think of no better message to conclude this conversation, which I wish could go on longer, but thank you both for your leadership. Thank you for your courage, for your passion for being with us today, and I'm sure many in the room are looking forward to joining you with our work, collective work moving forward. Thank you.
Right, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
You stay. Right.
Thank you so much. You were great. So good seeing you. All right, I now have the honor of moderating our next conversation, so you're stuck with me for a little bit longer. I am now delighted to introduce our next guest, who is Dr. Andrew Forrest. He is the executive chairman and founder of the Fortescue Metals Group. Now, you may wonder, why is the founder of a mining company here in a climate conference? And so you will be very, very pleased to hear his perspective about the future of a very heavy emitting, hard to abate industry, what opportunities exist, and how he uses his platform to be a relentless advocate for this concept, Real Zero, which you will hear about shortly. So please welcome to the stage, Dr. Andrew Forrest. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Now, I've had the pleasure of being with Dr. Forrest for the last couple days on this beautiful vessel, which all of you should definitely take a look at, called the Green Pioneer, which is just off of Pier
36.
This is going to be slightly unconventional in terms of the format of this. I'm gonna ask Dr. Forrest one question, and then we will have two questions from the audience, just so that we can understand a little bit more about what motivates you, what you're advocating for, and if Real Zero is actually possible. So with that, I'd like to ask you the first question, which is that your mantra has been this concept of Real Zero. I mean, this is something that you have repeated ardently and fervently in many platforms. I'd like to understand first, can you explain for everybody what is Real Zero? And what is the hardest truth that you've had to confront in actually seeing a path to achieving that goal?
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. So Real Zero, ladies and gentlemen, is facing up to the truth that carbon offsets, credits are feeding the financial markets, they're feeding the fossil fuel sector, but they're doing absolutely nothing for the climate. Since that dreadful word net got introduced, you've had the highest rise in temperatures, of course, in history. So the fact that we can give companies like mine a get out of jail card by saying, well, we're going net because we'll just buy these fake, flimsy credits off people, I think is going to be seen in the future as culpable, knowledgeable liability, which you ignored. And so I just want to warn companies across the world relying on the word net and buying credits when you know that they're mostly fake and when you know that they make very little difference, that's going to be an issue. So we advocate, we put that to one side and say, okay, what is the best economics? The best economics is not to be distracted at all by carbon credits, to just say, I will stop burning fossil fuel. Now, that was harder a few years ago, but you do have now what's been called the killer app of the 21st century, solar and batteries, or solar, wind and batteries, geothermal. All of these things are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So we just lead by example. We're Australia's highest performing company in our stock exchange history, and we're going real zero, which means that we do burn around 1 billion litres of diesel equivalent a year now. So we're a big stonking industrial company, but we'll go zero. We'll stop burning all emissions by 2030, and then we'll attack our shipping fleets and then everything else. But for all our terrestrial emissions, we just stop burning fossil fuel by 2030. And, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to save our shareholders money. So Real Zero, Charlotte, is simply stopping burning fossil fuel. And I like to ask every chief executive anywhere in the world, when will you stop burning fossil fuels?
And what I think is so powerful about what you're doing is that you're removing the excuse. The excuse that, well, the technologies don't exist. It's not possible. My business is going to suffer. I'm accountable to my shareholders. What you're demonstrating firsthand and directly through your own company is that it is possible. And you can visit the Green Pioneer, you can visit your sites in Australia and see that those technologies are already being brought online and being brought on board, and that you can make money doing it.
Exactly, Charlotte, and we'll be honoured if Time can come and visit these massive operations. You've got the biggest trains in the world, you've got some of the largest plants ever built. It's all there, and it's all turning green in the next several years. A stone's throw from here, ladies and gentlemen, you are so welcome. We sailed this ship, Dubai COP28. We were told, sorry, you cannot bring a pollution-free ship into Dubai. We said, hang on, you are holding a COP designed to get rid of global emissions and you're going to stop the world's first pollution-free ship? And the answer came back, yep, you're going to have to keep it at the 12-mile zone. And so you can imagine who I rang. And I said, I'm going to make you very famous soon, or you let my ship in. And that ship got brought straight in, because you could not imagine anything more embarrassing than a host of a COP stopping a pollution-free ship. Now, we had an almost similar welcome here in America, where you have a sovereign state pushing against renewable energy, building up old energy, I think to the detriment of the American people. Instead of having a bet on every horse in the race, which is what is clearly in your interest, at least that way you know you're going to win, putting a bet on one horse and saying that's all in gas and that's all you're going to bet on America, I think is fraught with danger. To prove the point, we sailed that ammonia ship into Pier 36 a day or two ago. It's there now. You're so welcome to visit it. It runs on ammonia. And ammonia, ladies and gentlemen, has been shipped around the world for decades. The beauty of ammonia, though, in a cubic metre of ammonia, you get more hydrogen molecules than you do in a cubic metre of hydrogen. And before you say, what are you smoking, Andrew? We've got to have some of it. All I can say is that ammonia has nitrogen in it, which of course is pretty cool for plants. And the nitrogen molecules are so big, and the hydrogen molecules so small that it compresses the hydrogen molecules, and you get more hydrogen molecules in a cubic metre of ammonia than hydrogen itself. So it's a very efficient carrier of energy. It can feed trains, ships, very long-term storage, and it of course contains that miracle element, hydrogen. Now, we back hydrogen completely because we need it for global shipping, and we ship 200 million tonnes a year. But ladies and gentlemen, the falling costs of equipment to make energy is unparalleled in history. You'll see energy coming down towards zero, plus cost of capital, which is becoming cheaper as well. And then you can store it. And we're seeing battery storage coming down by some 80 to 90% in cost. So the winds are blowing at the back of those people who want to stop global warming and fair into the face of those people who don't believe in it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that practical and real-life example that all of you can see, hopefully during Climate Week. So we have a question from the audience. I believe Mike Ran is here. Yes?
Hi, Mike Ran.
Andrew, I've had the great privilege of knowing Andrew for many years. As you can probably tell, we're both Australians. You mentioned the Dubai COP. There's no foregone conclusion, but Australia is bidding to be the host of the Australia Pacific COP in the end of next year, COP 31. So without, obviously it's not a foregone conclusion, but what would, if we do host the Pacific COP in the city of Adelaide, what would you like its legacy to be?
Okay, thanks, Mike. Well, firstly, I think you're right to call it the Pacific COP because Australia is in the middle of the Pacific. All those Pacific Island nations are all our brothers and sisters. They're all our sovereign family. And they are the most threatened in terms of climate change. So Australia, huge democracy, rule of law. We're not going to block any protesters. I think it's going to be a really noisy, colourful COP to attend. If you haven't been to COPs or if you've lost, like so many of the youth around the world, faith in COPs because they've been held by petrostates. Baku had really great COP leadership, but the president got up and in his first few words said he's a big believer in oil and gas. And I did have to remind him, you're at a COP, mate. It doesn't matter, it's at your country, you're at a COP. And, with those words, you could feel the disbelief in the youth around the world. And my inbox got slammed, led by my own children, with what's going on. I thought this was to get rid of global emissions. What I believe we will see in a Pacific COP held in Australia is the reinvigoration of the global youth in belief that this world can save itself and that not only can we remove that spectre of destruction on organic life, which is global warming, and we've crossed the first tipping point already, which is the destruction of coral reefs around the world. That's been predicted as the first of 16 tipping points, and we've crossed it. So to the youth of the world, I'd say a Pacific COP will bring back your heart, will bring back your hope, will bring back your faith that we, humanity, can end the spectre of global warming. And the beauty of it, we end it with renewable energy, we end fossil fuel, and you have a cheaper source of energy than your parents or grandparents ever had. You'll have close as the world's ever been to low-cost / free energy. That can power everything and a higher standard of living.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something to look forward to. So thank you for framing the hopefully next COP opportunity for us. We have one more question from the audience, Dipali Khanna. Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Sharda and Dr. Forrest. My question to you is, with business and private and innovation moving faster than ever, where do you see the greatest opportunity for the private sector to help bridge the climate delivery gap and uplift the vulnerable communities?
Investment and continuing to drive technology to not stop when you're faced with an overall challenge and you know that you can, if it's a 10-part challenge, say, for a country or a company or anyone to go fully renewable, you know you can get 7, 8, maybe 9 of those steps done. There'll be 1 or 2 you can't get done. And I say to everyone across the world, go after those first 7 or 8 or 9 steps that you can fix, and then you will highlight that one step And what will be stopping that step will be technology growth. But when that step itself gets highlighted, such as we've seen in batteries, when that step itself gets highlighted, that's when the focus of the technology world hones in on it and it gets resolved. Don't wait then to build out your plan. Once you've resolved that one step, you've got a complete plan. You can go renewable. And to stop, say, the proliferation of fossil fuel, we need the proliferation of 24/7 baseload reliable power. Now, we're bringing down the cost of generating energy dramatically with solar and wind. We have to store it. And for a long while, the world took its attention off storage. Now it's focusing in really hard on storage. And that is the journey. Get everything else right, fix that last problem. That last problem is storage. So we convert intermittent energy to 24/7 baseload energy, and we can bring down the cost of energy so eventually fossil fuel cannot compete.
Thank you so much, Dr. Forrest, for using your platform, using your role as a business leader and a successful business leader to show the way forward. Thank you so much for your time, for being here, for your tireless advocacy.
Please welcome Teresa Ribera, Executive Vice President of the European Commission for Clean, Just, and Competitive Transition.
Hello and very good morning. I'm so happy to be with you again. In many cases, in recognizing faces that I've known and people that I have worked with for a very long time. Look, we could say that these look like dark times. Some denying science and data, others delaying actions and solutions. Even a few challenging global governance and cooperation, or more surprisingly, witnessing how for the first time there are cargoes leaving Chinese ports, reaching the United Kingdom through the Arctic. So new realities, climate change redrawing the maritime transport maps, connecting new regions at the price of refueling ice loss in the Arctic. But here we are. Here you are. You all know that climate action works and that we need more. Things have moved in these last 10 years since we signed the Paris Agreement, but it's not enough. It's been real progress, but it's not enough. We signed this agreement thinking that it was one of the most enduring expressions of multilateral cooperation in modern history. So, even if we could think that this is difficult, it is working. The trends of change are real. And we know that it is important to remind ourselves how we should stand up. We came together, the European Union and China, not so far ago, last month of July, to say that we are committed, that we will work to do our best to reduce emissions, and to be constructive parts in the United Nations system. There are increasing number of Latin American, African countries building development based on green and fair development, climate-proof development. Even here in the United States of America, we revisit the commitment of those that insist to say America is still in. So it's not time to back down. It is time to move forward. It is time to stand up and spell it loud and clear. We want to do more. We in Europe are on track to meet our 2030 climate target, and we plan to accelerate our climate action towards climate neutrality by 2050. We want to be a well-performing economy. And in order to do so, we need to dive in our clean industrial deal, implementing the enablers that will allow us to create wealth and long-lasting prosperity. We speak about security. It's not easy times. But even in the context of the security discussion, we know that there is no security in a climate chaos. So building resilience, preparedness, ensuring availability of key primary resources such as water, food, health, energy in the new climate reality is a must for all of us. We need to be strong enough to defend our values. This means coherence both in our domestic policies and in our external action. So standing up to preserve a rules-based global order, standing together in solidarity and creating shared opportunities, paving the way for a fair transition. And we will come up with a contribution, with a nationally determined contribution of the European Union in full consistency with our goal to be fully decarbonized by 2050. But yes, the world is shifting and a new geopolitical order is emerging, whether we stick to fossil economy or we move towards a clean and efficient model. Take the example of energy in Europe. We have achieved half of our electricity being renewable source, coming from renewable sources, and they help us to save 100 billion euros in fossil fuel imports between 2021 and 2023 during one of the Europe's biggest energy crises. Of course, we still need to do much more. We need clear signals and stable rules to make long-term investment decisions. This is what we intended to do with this instrument, nationally determined contributions, providing good basis to be appealing for investors, to create good jobs, to find the right manners to address the different challenges ahead of us. It is our responsibility to create the adequate context, because climate leadership isn't just about what we do at home, because it is also about what we do with others. Achieving decarbonization and prosperity is something that deserves an engaged participation in the multilateral context. It is not a competition of the few. It has to be a shared effort so that anyone experiencing a growing fear that the world is losing its way does not dismay. Please, stand up. We have done it before. And of course, there are many more reasons why we can achieve it in a quicker and fair manner than waiting in a corner for others to solve their problems. Let's build hope. Let's remind ourselves that you are the ones bringing the light. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm just here to round off our opening ceremony and say what a fantastic morning it's been. I hope you feel as optimistic as I do. There's so much energy here to push forward on climate action. Media headlines can sometimes convey a different story around climate change, but what today demonstrates is that so much of the world is powering on. We've seen this energy from the governments of Antigua and Barbuda, Vanuatu, the EU, and all those others that spoke on our stage today, including some of the world's most influential business leaders. And we heard from those living along the Mississippi River, the heart of their social, cultural, and economic lives, and the risks they face if that heart stops pumping. Everyone expressed the need to power on, the need to secure a more energy-secure future, cleaner air, affordable energy bills, thriving job market, and a safer future for all the generations to come. After lunch, we'll kick off the Hub Live, which will run from Monday afternoon throughout Tuesday. And that's where we bring together heads of government, business leaders, experts to address the solutions to the barriers we're facing. We'll be looking at green leadership, policy and finance, the role of AI, and many other issues. And we have an entire city's worth of activity happening this week with over 1,000 events. It's amazing to see the City of New York as committed as ever. Its determination to push ahead on climate action, and that's sending a really reassuring message to all of us. Before we go into the break ahead of the Hub Live, I want to thank again our headline partner, Train Technologies, and our opening ceremony partner, McKinsey Sustainability. And I want to take a moment to thank all the incredible people who delivered this week. The team at Climate Group plays a crucial role in bringing Climate Week NYC to life. So thank you for your hard work and determination in pulling off this week during a really tough year. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. So thank you all, and let's power on with the rest of Climate Week NYC.